For 23 years, I cooked, cleaned, and stood outside every family photo. When my grandmother died, my mother tried to leave me in the hallway during the will reading until the lawyer said, "No, she stays." Then he read a letter that made my father's face go white. I almost waited in the hallway. 23 years of conditioning nearly cost me everything. And the scariest part is how close it came. How I had actually taken a step back, had actually felt my body begin its practiced retreat, had actually started mentally preparing the version of myself that waits quietly outside rooms where important things happen. My mother's hand was on the door. Her smile was the soft one, the practiced one, the one she uses in public when she needs to manage something without anyone noticing she's managing it. "Just wait out here, Evelyn. This is family business. Family business." I had heard those two words at midnight, scrubbing pans that weren't mine. I had heard them the summer I didn't go to prom because someone needed to be home when Ryan got back from his. I had heard them the year my college fund became Ryan's truck payment, explained to me with the gentle reasonableness of people who have never once questioned whether their reasonableness was reasonable. Family business, in our house, had a specific meaning that nobody ever stated directly. It meant you serve, but you don't inherit. My foot was already moving toward the hallway. 23 years of trained compliance is not a habit. It's a reflex, as automatic and unexamined as a blink. My body had already agreed to it before my mind caught up. Then the lawyer looked up. He was a small man, Mr. Bellamy, narrow-faced, rimless glasses, the particular stillness of someone who has learned that calm is more powerful than volume. He looked up from the folder in front of him, and he looked at me, specifically, precisely, as though he had been waiting for this exact moment and had prepared for it. "No," he said, "she stays." My mother laughed, her social laugh, light and musical, the one designed to make a room agree with her by making disagreement seem like a small and graceless thing. "I'm sorry?" Your mother was very specific. He didn't blink. "Evelyn remains in this room." My father uncrossed his legs. Ryan put his phone face down on the table, which was how I knew he was actually paying attention. My mother's face did that thing it does when the performance slips, irritation flickering under the surface like a light behind a curtain, then panic, then the practiced warmth snapping back into place. I sat down directly across from Mr. Bellamy. Nobody made room for me. I did not ask them to. He opened the folder. He pulled out a sealed envelope. My grandmother's handwriting was on the front, that familiar, careful cursive, blue ink, slightly compressed the way her writing got when she was being deliberate. "For the room," read aloud. All of it. He broke the seal. And my grandmother, dead 6 days, walked back into the room. I need to tell you what I was before I tell you what I became, because the distance between those two things is the whole story. My name is Evelyn Hart. I'm 31 years old, and until 6 days before that will reading, I was the most efficiently invisible person in my own family. I grew up in a 4-bedroom house in Fairfield, Connecticut, the kind of house with good bones and better appearances. Maintained lawn, seasonal wreath on the front door, the right kind of quiet for the neighborhood. My father, Thomas Hart, spent 30 years as a branch manager at Northeast Community Bank. My mother, Linda, ran the household with the organized efficiency of someone who has decided that management is more important than love and convinced herself they are the same thing. My brother Ryan is 34. He is the reason the house was 4 bedrooms instead of 3. I don't mean that literally. I mean that the house existed in the family's internal logic to contain and support Ryan. The rest of us were infrastructure. Ryan is the golden child in the specific, crystallized way of boys who are told early and often that they are exceptional and subsequently never develop the emotional musculature that comes from being challenged. He was good-looking in a comfortable, unthreatening way. He was charming the way a golden retriever is charming, all easy enthusiasm and no real effort. He made mediocre grades that my father described as solid and played 2 years of JV soccer that my mother photographed extensively. When he failed his driving test twice, my father called it character building. When I failed one quiz in 8th grade math, there was a family meeting about my study habits. I cooked dinner 3 nights a week, starting when I was 11, because mom said it would teach me responsibility. Ryan learned responsibility by being given a dirt bike at 13. I cleaned Ryan's room because he was going through a phase. The phase lasted until he moved out at 22. I folded Ryan's laundry because it was just easier. I microwaved his socks, for exactly 15 seconds before bringing them to him, because 14 seconds left them cold and 16 made them too hot. And I knew this because I had been corrected enough times to have learned the precise physics of sock temperature. I want to be clear. I am not describing dramatic abuse. There was no shouting, no violence, no dramatic confrontations to point to. What I am describing is something quieter and in some ways harder to name. The slow, consistent, structural message that I was useful but not important, that I was a function, not a person, that the family photo was for the family, and I could stand just outside the frame because someone needed to hold the camera. I missed prom. I missed 2 birthday dinners where no one set my place at the table until I pointed it out. I watched my college fund, $14,000 my grandmother had specifically designated for my education, specifically with my name attached, become the down payment on Ryan's truck, explained to me as a family necessity, with the implication that asking questions about it would make things harder on everyone. My grandmother, Eleanor Hart, Dad's mother, the only person in that family who ever looked at me like I was the point rather than the periphery, watched all of it. I didn't know then what she was doing with what she saw. I know now. Grandma Eleanor died on a Tuesday in March at the age of 82, in her own home, in her own bed, which was exactly how she had intended it. She had a DNR filed with her physician, Dr. Marcus Webb at Fairfield County General, had her affairs in order with her attorney, and had apparently, I would learn, been building something in the background for the last decade that none of us, except one person, had any idea existed. She left instructions about the will reading. Specific instructions communicated to Mr. Bellamy, George Bellamy, a state attorney, 28 years of practice, whose office was in a red brick building on Post Road, with a parking lot that never quite had enough spaces. All family members were to be present, including Evelyn, especially Evelyn. My mother found out about this when she called Mr. Bellamy's office 3 days before the reading, presumably to organize the logistics in the way she organized everything, which is to say, to arrange them in a configuration that served her preferred outcome. I found out she had made that call because Mr. Bellamy called me directly afterward. "Miss Hart," he said in the measured, careful tone of a man choosing words with precision, "I want to make sure you're planning to attend the reading on Friday." "Yes," I said. "Of course." A pause. "Good," he said. "Please come regardless of anything you might hear between now and then about scheduling or attendance. Your grandmother was very specific about your presence." I remember standing in my kitchen after he hung up, holding my phone, feeling the specific unease of information that doesn't quite make sense yet but carries weight. My grandmother had told her lawyer to make sure I came. Why would she need to do that? I thought about it for 2 days, turned it over from different angles, and couldn't make it resolve. I told myself it was probably nothing, probably just thoroughness. Grandma was thorough about everything. Probably she had left me something sentimental, a piece of jewelry, the blue ceramic bowl I'd always loved, and wanted to make sure I was there to receive it. I almost convinced myself. Then I arrived at Bellamy's office at 10 a.m. on Friday and found my mother waiting in the parking lot. "Oh, Evelyn." Her voice carried that specific warmth that has always made the hair on my arms stand up. "You didn't need to drive all the way out here. We can handle this for you. The estate isn't complicated." "Mr. Bellamy called me specifically," I said. "Lawyers are so formal." She waved it away. "It's just procedural. Family business, sweetheart. Why don't you wait at the house? I'll call you when we're done." Family business. That phrase. There it was. I said I'd wait inside, and I followed her into the building. And that was when she tried the hallway. And that was when Mr. Bellamy said, "No, she stays." And the door to the rest of my life opened. He read the letter in a voice that was completely, deliberately neutral. That was the right choice. My grandmother had written it, and it needed no performance. The weight was in the words, the accumulation of detail, the specific, named, dated precision of a woman who had spent years watching and writing things down and saying nothing, waiting for the moment when the saying would matter. She started with the chair. The armchair in the living room, wingback, burgundy, my grandmother's chair when she visited, that Evelyn was not allowed to sit in, not because of any stated rule, but because of the way Linda would look at her if she did. A look so practiced, so efficient, that the chair became untouchable without a single word ever being said about it. She named the birthday dinner. March 4th, Evelyn's 14th birthday. 6 place settings at the table. Evelyn's was not among them. The family ate. Nobody noticed until Evelyn went to the kitchen to bring out a dish and didn't come back. Eleanor had gone to find her and found her eating, standing at the counter. She named the college fund, $14,000. Designated by Eleanor herself in a birthday card the year Evelyn turned 16 in writing, with her name on it. For Evelyn's education, spent on Ryan's truck down payment 3 years later, with a conversation delivered to Evelyn about family priorities and how Ryan needed it more, and how girls mature faster, and so she'd be fine. She named Thanksgiving. Not one Thanksgiving. 4 of them, spanning a decade. Evelyn at the stove for 6 hours, Linda at the table, Thomas carving the turkey, Ryan on the couch, Linda saying, at some point every year, with the bright, approving voice of someone conferring a compliment, "Isn't Evelyn just so helpful?" Like helpful was the only thing she was allowed to be. Like helpful was its own reward. Mr. Bellamy read all of it without inflection, without pausing to manage the room's reaction, without any visible awareness that my mother's face had gone the color of old milk, or that Ryan had stopped pretending to look at his phone, or that my father's hands were very, very still on the table. He read for 11 minutes. I know because I was watching the clock on the wall the way I'd watched clocks for 23 years. The habit of someone who has learned to track time, to know when things will end, to have an internal counter running even when everything else is overwhelming. 11 minutes. When he finished, the room was so quiet, I could hear the ventilation system in the building. My mother moved first, as she always does. Mother was very ill toward the end, she said. Her voice was careful, structured, deployed like a tool. Her mind, Mr. Bellamy said, and his voice had changed, still flat, but with something underneath it now, something final, was clear enough to execute a legal document witnessed by 3 parties, including her personal physician and 2 members of this firm. The document was prepared over the course of 8 months. It was revised 4 times. He set the letter down on the table with a slight, precise motion. "Shall we proceed to the estate?" My mother closed her mouth. The estate was larger than I knew. Grandma Eleanor had lived modestly. A small house in Milford, sensible car, sensible clothes, butterscotch candies from the pharmacy, the same kitchen curtains for 20 years, the appearance of someone living carefully on a fixed income. The appearance? She had worked for 35 years as a bookkeeper, first for a manufacturing company in Bridgeport, and later for 2 smaller firms whose owners she had outlived short-lived. She was good with numbers in the way that quiet, precise people are good with things. Not showy about it, just correct, reliably, and always. She had invested since her 30s. Small amounts consistently, reinvested dividends, low-cost index funds. Before that was the language people used for it. She had been, I would learn from the estate documents, what financial planners call a slow and steady compounder. The estate, when Mr. Bellamy itemized it, was $847,000. The house in Milford, $310,000 paid off. Investment accounts, $412,000. Savings and checking, $87,000. The remaining $38,000 was split into smaller designated accounts. My mother's expression, as he read the numbers, was the expression of someone doing arithmetic and not being pleased with the results. The distribution, Mr. Bellamy continued, turning to a new page, is as follows. He read the allocations. Ryan, $40,000. In recognition of family relationship. The deliberate smallness of it was its own message. Thomas and Linda, the personal items from the house, as itemized, which were not, as they would shortly discover, the items they expected. And then, the house, the investment accounts, and the majority of the savings, to Evelyn Marie Hart, sole primary beneficiary, subject to one condition. Please retrieve the ledger. Nobody moved. There is a black ledger, Mr. Bellamy continued, reading from his notes with the same unaltered calm he had maintained throughout, stored beneath the flour bin in the pantry of the family home. Your grandmother requests it be brought to this table before the estate is finalized. Ryan looked at Dad. Dad looked at Mom. Mom looked at her hands. And I watched something I had never seen in 31 years of watching my father. Thomas Hart, silver-templed, bank manager voiced, the man who had entered every room of my childhood with the unquestionable authority of someone who has never been asked to account for himself, swallowed. Hard. The way you swallow when something rises in your throat that you didn't expect. There's no ledger, he said. The words came out wrong. Too fast. Too careful. Too thin. Like paper that has been folded too many times along the same crease. Mr. Bellamy removed his glasses, set them on the table, looked at my father with the particular stillness of a man who has already finished deciding about something. Mr. Hart, he said quietly, your mother kept very thorough records. My father's face had gone white, not pale. White. The specific, bloodless white of a man who has just remembered something he thought he'd successfully buried. My mother was looking at him. Not at Mr. Bellamy, not at me, at Thomas, with an expression I had never seen on her before and could not immediately name because it was too raw for the controlled vocabulary of Linda Hart's face. It looked like, you told me there was nothing to find. Ryan said, Dad, my father said nothing. The ledger, Mr. Bellamy said, with the patient precision of someone who has time and knows it, is a condition of distribution. The estate cannot be formally transferred until it is produced and its contents are acknowledged by all parties present. Acknowledged how? My father said. Read, understood, and, where applicable, addressed. A silence opened up in the room. I sat in the middle of it and felt something strange. Not anxiety, not the familiar low hum of waiting to be managed or handled or redirected. Something different, something still. I thought about the pantry in the family home, white shelves, glass canisters my mother had bought from a catalog and arranged in descending order of size. The flour bin, ceramic, with a latch on the lid, on the third shelf from the floor. I had reached into that pantry 10,000 times over 23 years. I had never thought to look under the flour bin. My grandmother had. I'll go, I said. Four heads turned toward me. To the house, I said. I'll go get the ledger. You don't know where, my father started. Mr. Bellamy told us where it is, I said. Under the flour bin. I know the pantry. Of course I knew the pantry. I had restocked it more times than I could count. I had organized it when Mom decided to reorganize it. I had cleaned the shelves, replaced the paper liners, carried the canisters to the sink to wash and dried them, and put them back in their arranged descending order. I knew that pantry better than any room I'd ever had that was supposed to be my own. I'll drive, Mr. A. Bellamy said, closing the folder. The family home was a 20-minute drive. Mr. Bellamy had a key. My grandmother had given it to him, he told me in the car, along with written instructions about the ledger and specific instructions about what to do if the family tried to access the house between her death and the will reading. Did they? I asked. He kept his eyes on the road. There were 2 attempts to access the property in the 4 days following your grandmother's death. Both were denied. I thought about that. 2 attempts. In 4 days. Who? I asked, though I already knew. Your father made 1 call requesting the key. Your mother came to the office in person. In person. My mother had driven to a lawyer's office to try to get into a dead woman's house before the will was read. To do what? To get the ledger. To get it before anyone else knew it existed. The question that settled in me in the passenger seat of Mr. I. Bellamy's car, the question I turned over for the rest of the drive, was not what was in the ledger. That was obvious. Grandma's records, like the letter, detailed and specific and damning. The question was, what had my father done that required a ledger? I thought about the college fund, $14,000, disappeared into Ryan's truck. I thought about smaller things. A birthday check from Grandma that I'd never received, told later it had been deposited for safekeeping. A summer job I'd had at 16 where my mother had asked me to deposit my paychecks into the family account, just temporarily, until I got my own account set up, which never happened. Small amounts, routine redirections, the kind of thing that each time, individually, seemed like a logistics issue rather than a pattern. The kind of thing that, added up over years, in a ledger ledger, in my grandmother's careful bookkeeper's handwriting, would look exactly like what it was. The pantry was exactly where I'd left it. The flour bin was on the third shelf, ceramic, white with a blue painted rim. I lifted it, heavier than I expected, and set it on the counter. Beneath it was a black composition notebook, the kind you can buy at any office supply store, held shut with a rubber band. I picked it up. It had some weight to it. I handed it to Mr. Bellamy. He held it with both hands, didn't open it, and nodded once. We drove back. The room was exactly as we'd left it, except that everyone in it had aged about 10 years. My mother was sitting very straight. Ryan was looking at the table. My father had his hands flat on the surface in front of him, not moving, in the posture of a man holding himself still by conscious effort. Mr. Bellamy set the ledger on the table. Nobody reached for it. He opened it himself. My grandmother had been a bookkeeper for 35 years. The ledger reflected this. It was dated, organized, categorized, and referenced, a document that would hold up in any context where thoroughness is required, which is to say any legal context, which I believe she understood completely. The first section, financial, itemized, dated, and sourced. Every redirection of money intended for me that had been diverted elsewhere. The college fund, the largest item, $14,000, December of my senior year of high school, to Ryan's truck. But not just that. Birthday checks from Grandma, 11 of them over 11 years, ranging from $200 to $500, each one accompanied by a note about what she had written in the card and what she had later learned had actually happened to the money. A summer job, 2 summers, paychecks deposited into the family account and never transferred. Christmas money, twice. Total, approximately $27,400 over 15 years. My father's hands on the table began to shake, just slightly, just enough to see. This is, he started, documented, Mr. Bellamy said. He didn't look up from the ledger. Your mother obtained bank records through her own banking contacts. She was thorough. The second section was not financial. It was personal. A narrative record, chronological, of incidents my grandmother had witnessed or been told about. Incidents she had observed during family visits and written down afterward. Incidents I had told her about, apparently, in conversations I'd had on her back porch over tea, where I'd thought I was just talking, just processing, and she had been listening with the focused attention of a woman taking testimony. The birthday dinner, the prom, the chair, the Thanksgiving line about Evelyn being helpful, repeated 4 years in a row, and things I had told her that I had told no one else. The time my mother told me when I was 19 and had been accepted to a 4-year school in Boston, that it might be better for me to stay local because the family needed me here. I stayed. I went to community college and then transferred and worked 2 jobs and paid my own way, and for years I had told myself it was a reasonable choice, a mature choice, a choice I had made. She had written it down, the date, what I'd said to her on the phone, what I had been offered, and what I had been talked out of. Ryan read over the table. He said softly, I didn't know about the college fund. I know, I said. He looked at me. Grandma made note of that, Mr. Bellamy said, not unkindly. He found the page. She writes, Ryan does not know about Evelyn's fund. He is not responsible for the decision. He benefits from a system his parents maintain, but the decisions were theirs. Ryan put his head in his hands. My father hadn't moved. My mother said, this is a private family matter. Whatever mother recorded, it was her interpretation of events and interpretations. Mrs. Hart, Mr. Bellamy's voice had not changed in volume or inflection, but something in it stopped her. The financial records are not interpretations. They are documented transactions. Your mother cross-referenced them with bank statements, which are also in this file. He held up the back of the ledger. A pocket, tucked inside the back cover. Photocopied bank statements, paper-clipped in chronological order. My mother said nothing. The estate, Mr. Bellamy said, closing the ledger, distributes as follows. To Evelyn Marie Hart, the house, the investment accounts, and primary savings, totaling approximately $809,000. Additionally, your grandmother has requested, not required, requested, that the financial irregularities documented in this ledger be addressed by your parents directly with you. She leaves the form of that address to your discretion. He looked at me. She understood you might not want it. She wrote, Evelyn is not required to pursue anything. She has earned peace, but she deserves to know what was taken, and they deserve to know that she knows. The room was very quiet. I also need to inform you, Mr. Bellamy said, removing his glasses again and setting them on the table, that I have already forwarded a copy of the financial documentation in this ledger to a colleague of mine, Patricia Owens, a forensic accountant, who has reviewed the bank statement photocopies. She has confirmed that the discrepancies are consistent with misappropriation. I have also, at your grandmother's specific direction, shared this documentation with Detective Karen Mills at the Fairfield County Financial Crimes Unit. The words landed in the room like stones dropped into still water. Detective, financial crimes. My father's hands stopped shaking. They went completely still. That is, Mr. Bellamy continued, a precautionary measure taken at your grandmother's request to ensure the documentation was properly preserved regardless of what occurred at this meeting. Whether law enforcement proceeds further depends on factors outside my control, but the record exists. My father looked at me. For the first time in 31 years, Thomas Hart, silver-templed, bank manager-voiced, authority-wearing Thomas Hart, looked at me with something I did not have a word for at the time, and have since identified as the expression of a man who has been completely seen. Evelyn, he said. His voice came out the wrong size. Too small, too uncertain. The voice of a man who has lost the thing that made him large. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Detective Karen Mills of the Fairfield County Financial Crimes Unit had 17 years on the force, 9 of them in the financial division. She called me 4 days after the will reading. Her voice was direct and efficient and free of the particular warmth that is sometimes used to manage people's expectations downward. "Miss Hart," she said, "I've reviewed the documentation forwarded by Mr. Bellamy. I'd like to set up a meeting." We met at her office the following Tuesday. The documentation my grandmother had assembled was, Detective Mills told me, unusually well organized. She said this with the dry appreciation of someone who usually works with much messier evidence. The bank statements, cross-referenced against the ledger entries, gave her a clear financial picture. "The college fund is the clearest item," she said. "It was designated for you in writing by the donor, your grandmother, and redirected without your consent to another recipient. That's documentable. The summer paychecks are trickier because you technically authorize the deposits at the time, even if under pressure. The birthday money requires corroboration. What happens next?" I asked. She looked at me over her desk with the expression of someone who is about to give a real answer rather than a managed one. "That depends partly on what you want," she said. "Your father's position at the bank complicates things, not because it protects him, but because financial crimes investigations involving people in financial institutions tend to move carefully. I can tell you that I'm moving forward regardless, but if you're asking whether he'll face charges, that's the DA's decision, not mine." Thomas Hart resigned from Northeast Community Bank 11 days after the will reading. The bank's official statement cited personal reasons. The unofficial version, which I heard from a neighbor who knew someone in HR and which I neither confirmed nor denied, was that he had resigned when informed that an investigation had been opened and that his employer had been notified of potential financial misconduct. 30 years at that bank, gone in 11 days. He did not face criminal charges in the end. Patricia Owens, the forensic accountant, concluded that while the misappropriation was documentable, the amounts and the complexity of prosecution made civil recovery the more viable path. My attorney, I had retained one, Margaret Cho of Cho and Associates, 15 years of estate and civil litigation, sent my parents a formal demand for $27,400, documented and itemized from the ledger. They settled in 6 weeks, $27,400. 30 years of managing a family's appearances, and it turned out the going rate for my labor and my future and my college fund and my socks microwave to exactly 15 seconds was $27,400. Margaret Cho told me this was a good outcome. She was right, technically. I deposited the check and didn't feel what I thought I would feel. I want to tell you about the house. My grandmother's house in Milford is small, 400 square feet, 3 bedrooms, a kitchen with yellow curtains that she chose in 1987 and never changed because she liked them. There's a back porch where we used to drink tea, where I used to tell her things I didn't tell anyone else, where she apparently listened with the focused, quiet attention of someone taking notes she would later give to a lawyer. I moved in May. I packed my apartment in 2 trips, which tells you something about how I had been living, and unpacked into rooms that felt both entirely new and deeply familiar. The blue ceramic bowl I had always loved was in the kitchen cabinet. She had left it there for me. There was a note under it. "I always saw you reach for this one." In the second bedroom, I set up an office. I work remotely now. I'd been doing administrative work for a property management company, which paid enough but not well, and in the months after the will reading I had, with the particular clarity that comes from having your life restructured, begun to actually plan what I wanted instead of what was left over after everyone else's needs were met. I went back to school in September, enrolled in the accounting program at Southern Connecticut State, part-time, online, paid for in cash from the investment accounts my grandmother had spent 40 years building. I thought about her a lot during those first weeks of class, about the fact that she had been a bookkeeper for 35 years and had seen numbers as a language, as a record, as a form of truth-telling. She had used that language to write me a letter I received after she died. She had turned her professional skill into an act of love so specific and so thorough that it had survived her. Ryan called me twice in the month after the reading. He was different on the phone than I'd expected. Not apologetic exactly, because I think the machinery of his privilege is too embedded for him to fully dismantle in a phone call, but quieter, more careful. He said, in the second call, "I didn't know what they were doing." "I know," I said. "Grandma wrote that down." A pause. "She was looking out for you," he said, "even when nobody else was." "Yes," I said, "she was. My parents and I have not spoken since the settlement. My mother sent a text in August. 'I hope you're well. Family is complicated.' I didn't respond. I read it twice, then put my phone down and went back to the yellow curtains and the blue ceramic bowl and the porch where my grandmother used to sit with me and listen. Family is complicated. My mother is right about that, in the most limited and self-serving way. Family is complicated. Family is also sometimes one woman sitting at a kitchen table for decades, watching and recording and waiting, not for revenge, but for the moment when the truth could matter, when it could be delivered into a room full of people who had never expected to account for themselves and actually land. I stood outside family photos for 23 years. My grandmother watched me stand there. She saw it. She documented it. And then she handed a lawyer a sealed envelope and a composition notebook and a set of bank statements. And she said, "Read this in front of all of them." And the lawyer looked up and said, "She stays." There is a photograph on my desk now. My grandmother and me, her back porch, 2019. I'm holding a teacup. She's looking at me with the expression I didn't know how to name when she was alive and can name now without difficulty. She is looking at me like like I am the point. Not the periphery, not the helpful one, not the one who holds the camera, the point. I look at it on the hard days when the old voice surfaces, the one that says you serve but you don't inherit, the one that has 17 years of practice and knows all my weak spots. I look at it and I think about an 82-year-old woman who sat in a lawyer's office 8 months before she died and revised her documents for the 4th time to make sure they were airtight. She didn't leave me the money because she felt sorry for me. She left me everything because she had been watching for decades and she had concluded, with the methodical certainty of a woman who spent 35 years making numbers tell the truth, that I had earned it. Not earned it the way you earn something through work, though God knows I had done the work. Earned it the way you earn someone's trust, by showing up, by staying, by sitting on a porch and drinking tea and talking honestly with an old woman who was taking notes with her whole heart, even when you didn't know she was. My father lost his job. My mother sends texts I don't answer. Ryan and I talk sometimes. It's strange and careful and occasionally real, which is probably the best it can be. The flower bin is in my grandmother's kitchen now. Mine. I didn't move it. I kept it on the 3rd shelf, ceramic with a blue painted rim, exactly where it's always been. I know what's under it. Nothing now. The ledger is in a fireproof box in my office, along with the rest of the estate documents and the letter Mr. Bellamy read aloud in that conference room. I don't need to open it. I just need to know it exists. My grandmother built a record of my life when I was too trained to build one for myself. That's the thing I come back to. The thing I can't quite get past. The thing I think about in the kitchen with the yellow curtains and the blue ceramic bowl and the steam rising from my tea. She saw me. All of it. Every Sunday I stood outside the frame. Every birthday dinner with 5 place settings. Every sock microwaved to exactly 15 seconds. Every future that was quietly, reasonably redirected somewhere else. She saw it, and she wrote it down, and she kept it safe for me until I was ready to receive it. I always saw you reach for this one. She left me more than money. She left me proof that I was worth seeing, and that, in the end, was the inheritance